This is the third generation Fiat 500, the model the brand rather charmingly calls a boutique car for the working man or woman. This new era design will certainly have far more across-the-board appeal. Contrary to appearances, everything is different, not least the fact that you can only have battery power, this being Fiat's first all-electric car, offered as with the previous 500 in three-door hatch and convertible body styles. It's stylish, cheeky, and best of all, the driving range is class-leading for a tiny EV. In short, if you can afford one, there's lots to like.
So, what's this new era 500 like to drive? Well, it's nippy enough from rest, although you don't get that rather pointless surge of thrust that is found with some rivals, and that's all to the good because it makes urban progress rather smoother. This car always starts in its usual normal E-mode setting from the off, and that's one of three modes that you can select via this little rocker switch between the seats here. For frugal driving, you'll need to choose between the other two. There's range, and that maximizes regenerative braking, and Sherpa, which restricts the throttle and the climate system use. And you'll certainly need to make good use of those two settings if you're going to get anywhere close to replicating the quoted WLTP driving range figure of this 42 kilowatt hour battery model with its 117 bhp electric motor up to 199 miles. A lesser 24 kilowatt hour battery is offered with a 92 bhp motor, but that will only take you up to 115 miles. There's lots here that owners of previous 500 models will recognise. The high-ish seating position and the manoeuvrability, for example. There's a tight 9.6 metre turning circle. You do also get the previous model's rather brittle low-speed ride quality, although it does cope with poorer potholes and speed humps quite well. And anyway, things smooth out quite a lot once you get out of town. And that's when you might discover that this Fiat actually handles quite well, despite having to carry around 350 kilos more weight than the Mark II mild hybrid petrol model. All the weight of the mattress-shaped Samsung battery has been positioned well down, and that compensates for the extra bulk with a lower centre of gravity, hence the well-controlled body roll at speed through the corners. Although the effect of that is somewhat masked by the rather anaesthetised electric steering. DC rapid charging is standard with full battery replenishment from an 85 kilowatt DC fast charger, if you can find one, taking just 35 minutes to 80%. A more normal 11 kilowatt AC Type 2 charger will need 4.25 hours to do the same thing, and it'll be 15.5 hours from a domestic plug. How do you reinvent a small car icon? Well, pretty much like this, we'd say. The Mark III version of this Fiat is recognisable to all as a 500, characteristic in proportion, in silhouette, and in its distinctive central line alongside the two previous generation designs. This time around, though, this car is a little wider, a little longer, and a little more sophisticated. But it'd still be as at home in the back streets of Turin as the 57 original. So, evolution outside, but revolution is promised within. Here, familiar modern cues are mixed with a much more elegant and upmarket feel. You sit higher than you'd expect to in a small car of this sort and survey the usual 500 model body-coloured dashboard. This 10.25-inch Uconnect 5 central screen supplies a required extra dose of sophistication, as does the 7-inch TFT instrument display. And there's a far more open and spacious feel than the previous model, partly because of the exterior dimensional increases, which particularly benefit head and shoulder space, and partly because of the empty space between the lower console and the dash, where a gear stick would normally be. That has instead been replaced by P, R, N and D buttons on the lower part of the fascia. Interior storage has been reconsidered and here organised using various modular compartments, and the seats, they've been redesigned, usually trimmed in this sequel cloth, which is fashioned partly from reclaimed marine plastics. Right, time to take a look out back. Now, you can't have everything in a car this short, but we had hoped that this Mark III model's 22mm wheelbase increase might have liberated a bit more space in the rear. It is immediately obvious, though, as the front seat angles towards the dash, that this isn't the case. Now at launch, Fiat told us that all this car's interior spaces had been redesigned to give passengers the feeling of sitting on a romantic bench. Well, we don't think you'd feel particularly romantic if you were cooped up back here for very long. Even kids will probably only be in any way comfortable if your front seat occupants sacrifice a bit of legroom. Finally, let's take a look out back. Raising this surprisingly heavy tailgate reveals an unsurprisingly tiny boot area, topped off by an equally tiny parcel shelf. There's only 185 litres of space here, the same as the old combustion model. For Fiat, this new era 500 EV has to work. Globally, this model line is, after all, the brand's only truly successful product range. If it fails, Fiat fails with it. Now true, this may no longer be the cheap people's car it once was, but without doubt it retains the spirit of the original.